I remember how new to myself at that time was this Indian idea that it was character that made a truth tell, the love expressed that made aid successful, the degree of concentration behind a saying that gave it force and constituted its power. Thus, the text, consider the lilies, how they grow, holds us, said the Swami, not by the spell of its beauty, but by the depth of renunciation that speaks in it. Was this true? I felt that the question might be tested by experience, and after some time I came to the conclusion that it was. A quiet word from a mind that put thought behind language carried immediate weight, when the same utterance from the careless would pass by unheeded. I do not know a stronger instance of this fact than a certain saying that is recorded of the Caliph Ali. Many have heard, and none surely without emotion, the words of the Lion of Islam. Thy place in life is seeking after thee. Therefore be thou at rest from seeking after it. But never until we relate them to the speaker, 4 times passed over in the succession to the caliphate, never until we know how the man's whole life throbs through them, are we able to explain the extraordinary power of these simple sentences. I found also that an utterance consciously directed to the mind instead of merely to the hearing of the listener evoked more response than the opposite. And having begun to make these psychological discoveries, I was led gradually to the perception that if indeed one's reason could, as one had long thought, make no final line of demarcation as between mind and matter, yet at least that aspect of the one substance which we called matter was rather the result of that called mind or spirit than the reverse. The body, not the will, must be regarded as a byproduct of the individuality. This, in turn, led to the conception of a consciousness held above the body, a life governing matter, and free of it, so that it might conceivably disrobe and find new garments, or cast off the form known to us, as that form itself casts off a wounded skin. Till at last I found my own mind echoing the Swami's great pronouncement on immortality. The body comes and goes. But this ripening of thought came gradually and did not complete itself for many months. In the meantime, as I look back upon that time, I feel that what we all really entered upon in the Swami's classes was not so much an intellectual exposition as a life of new and lofty emotions, or as they would be called in India, realizations. We heard the exclamation in describing the worship of God as a child, "Do we want anything from Him?" We bowed to the teaching that love is always a manifestation of bliss, and that any pang of pain or regret was therefore a mark of selfishness and physicality. We accepted the austere ruling that any, even the slightest impulse of differentiation as between ourselves and others was hatred, and that only the opposite of this was love. Many who have ceased to believe in the creed of their childhood have felt that at least the good of others was still an end in itself, and that the possibility of service remained, to give a motive to life. It is strange now that 10 years have passed to remember the sense of surprise with which, holding this opinion, we listened to the decorous Eastern teaching that highest of all gifts was spirituality, a degree lower intellectual knowledge, and that all kinds of physical and material help came last. all our welling pity for sickness and for poverty classified in this fashion. It has taken me years to find out, but I now know that in train of the higher giving, the lower must needs follow. Similarly to our Western fanaticism about pure air and hygienic surroundings, as if these were marks of saintliness, was opposed the stern teaching of indifference to the world. Here indeed we came up against a closed door and had no key. When the Swami said in bold consciousness of paradox that the saints had lived on mountaintops to enjoy the scenery, and when he advised his hearers to keep flowers and incense in their worship rooms and to care much for the purity and cleansing of food and person, we did not understand enough to connect the two extremes. But, in fact, he was preaching our own doctrine of physical refinement as it would be formulated in India. And is it not true that until we in the West have succeeded in cleansing the slums of our great cities, our fastidiousness is very like the self-worship of the privileged?